fight fans, thank you so much for joining me once again here on hyfntv. I'm Kyle Dyer, and we are here to talk about UFC Fight Night. What happened last weekend? A little bit of a setback for one of the up-and-comers in the middleweight division. Also, huge news pertaining to the UFC Heavyweight Championship dropped just after the Fight Night card concluded this past Saturday. We've got a fight that is now booked in just 2 months, but it doesn't include who you think it might. Also, we're going to talk about the first UFC pay-per-view of the year coming up this Saturday in Rio de Janeiro. This is the HYFN TV Combat Sports Report. The first UFC Fight Night of 2023 took place this past Saturday, and it featured number 12 middleweight contender Nassourdine Imavov taking on number 7 Sean Strickland. Now remember, this fight was supposed to be between Imavov and Kelvin Gastelum, but Gastelum was forced to drop out due to an injury, with Strickland stepping in on short notice. So this fight was actually fought at the light heavyweight limit of 205 pounds instead of the middleweight 185 pounds because Strickland was just had a few days to prepare for the fight and couldn't properly manage his weight. I think this was a big part of the outcome that we saw in this fight because Imavov struggled early and often to get through both Strickland's jab as well as his counter-striking. Imavov looked slow and seemed to get frustrated in the middle rounds as Sean Strickland seemed like he could do no wrong. Not only did Strickland completely demoralize Imavov with his striking for the first 4 rounds, but he also did a fantastic job of using that higher weight limit to his advantage. One thing that Strickland does that is very unorthodox is that he's one of the few fighters that actually spars as part of virtually every workout that he has with MMA 4-ounce gloves. So this makes him more comfortable fighting at his, what we call, walking around weight. This allowed him to do all of the things, striking-wise, that he normally does, as well as make Imavov carry his weight against the cage in the clinch, which seemed not only to frustrate Imavov, but also sap his energy throughout the fight. Imavov put his foot on the gas in the 5th round in an attempt to come back and win the fight, but it was too little too late as Strickland picked up the win on the scorecards in a unanimous decision. The middleweight rankings remain unchanged, with Strickland holding number 7 and Imavov at number 12, as it seems the voters accounted for the short notice of the fight. And so the fights to look for Strickland coming up, maybe to fight somebody like number 10, Dricus du Plessis next, while we think maybe Imavov is going to be matched up against somebody like number 9, Jack Hermanson, or number 11, Andre Muniz. Huge news dropped over the weekend, and it's bittersweet as one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time, John Bones Jones, will return to the octagon after 3 years away, and he will challenge for the UFC Heavyweight Championship. However, he will not challenge now former champ Francis Ngannou, as it was announced this weekend that a contractual agreement was not able to be reached with the Predator, and thus he has officially walked away from the UFC, relinquishing his championship to pursue other ventures in the combat sports world. While exact details are not available regarding what the UFC offered, Ngannou reportedly turned down a deal that would have made him the highest paid UFC heavyweight in history. Speculation is that Francis will attempt to book a big money boxing match, as he has said that he wants to face the likes of Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua. However, Deontay Wilder remains to be a possible opponent for Francis, as that name has been thrown around as well. Once he is ready, Francis could return to the UFC, but it's just as likely that he could join Bellator, One Championship, or even Rizin. Based on what Francis has said in the past, look for it to be whoever can not only dig into the deepest of their pockets, but also provide the ability to procure his own endorsement deals, as well as provide health insurance, surprisingly enough. Independent contractors, typically not something that's requested, but again, if he's looking to change the game a little bit, that's one way to do it. In the meantime, the now vacant heavyweight championship will be up for grabs on UFC 285's card in Las Vegas, as John Jones will take on former heavyweight title contender Ciryl Gane. Gane came into the UFC in 2019 and looked unstoppable, winning his first 7 fights in the promotion, defeating the likes of Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Junior Dos Santos, and Alexander Volkov. However, he was handed his first loss in the UFC last January when he lost a unanimous decision to Francis Ngannou. Gane has the skill set to beat Jon Jones. The question is, will he fight the fight that he needs to in order to make this happen, or will he be too passive, allowing Jones to impose his will and control the fight? We'll see on March 4th, so keep an eye on the Combat Sports Report right here on HYFN TV during the week leading up to that event for a full fight preview. All right, so enough about what's going to happen in 2 months, because now I want to talk about UFC 283 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, coming up this Saturday. There are 2 championship fights on this card, which is headlined by former light heavyweight king and ageless wonder, 43-year-old Brazil native and number 2 contender Glover Teixeira, taking on number 7 light heavyweight contender Jamal Hill. This fight was hastily made last month, just minutes after Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev met for the vacant light heavyweight strap, but the fight ended in a split draw. Look for a very different fight between Hill and Teixeira, as both of these fighters will look to finish at every chance that they get. Teixeira was on a 6-fight win streak before losing the title in his first defense against Yuri Prohaska last June, a fight that Glover was winning on the scorecards before shockingly being submitted by a rear naked choke in the 5th round. Jamal Hill has no interest in being on the mat with Teixeira, as the 31-year-old knockout artist aims to utilize his incredible power to end this fight early and become champion. Hill has finished all 5 of his UFC victories since 2020 via TKO or knockout, so he's the kind of fighter that you can never count out, especially against a fighter on the wrong side of 40 like Glover Teixeira. The one blemish on his record, though, provides the only blueprint that Teixeira needs for victory, and that is to get the fight to the mat. Hill's lone loss in the UFC came against Paul Craig in June 2021 at UFC 263, when Craig took the fight to the mat, a place that Hill looked totally lost, and quickly locked in a triangle armbar combination, snapping Hill's arm and then bludgeoning him with hammer fists and elbows until the fight was stopped. If Teixeira wants to reclaim the 205-pound title, he needs to put this fight on the ground and smother Hill, taking advantage of his ineptitude on the mat, as Glover has some of the best jiu-jitsu in the division. Never count Hill out, though, because going back to that incredible power, a man's chin can only withstand so much, and Teixeira has been knocked out in the past, so don't be surprised if Hill catches Glover in the early rounds and puts him to sleep. If that doesn't happen, though, look for Teixeira to use his ground game to electrify the hometown crowd and win the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship for a second time. Either way, this fight is not getting decided by the judges. And that's it for the HYFN TV Combat Sports Report this week. Remember, you can always catch us on HYFN TV Live, but if you miss us, no sweat. Catch us hyfntv.com on demand or on your Roku device. Hey, listen, next week, check us out. We're going to recap what happened on the pay-per-view this weekend. We're also going to talk about UFC Fight Night coming up next weekend, so don't miss us. Another action-packed show. In the meantime, enjoy those fights this weekend. We'll see you next week.